So I really like this question. It's a bit tricky, but it really shows that you need to understand the difference between exponential and linear functions. Now, for real life scenarios, we are looking at either an exponential growth or decay model. And because it was growing by about 6% per year, we're talking about the exponential growth model. And they say they ended at 19,600. However, it then goes on to say that for the next few years, the growth slowed to an increase of about 1,300 per year. This one ends up being the linear model, which we'll get to in a moment. To the nearest dollar, how much less did it grow during the next 6 years than it would have if it had maintained its earlier growth rate? So in that 6-year period that they're referring to, even though it says it ended at 19,600 when it transitioned from going from exponential to linear, really in this case, because we're trying to figure out the hypothetical growth of that 6-year period after it ended at 19,600, that 19,600 is actually our A value, which is our starting value, because that's the starting value for that next 6-year period, which was really the ending value when it stopped growing at that great 6% rate. Now we're going to call this the exponential function, and we know in parentheses it's 1 plus r, in other words 100% plus 6%, so 106%, which is 1.06. And it's to the, normally you would see t, we'll use x here, but that's the number of years. Then let's contrast that with the linear model. Up here, this was an e, not a very good one. But for the linear model, our 19,600 is our y-intercept. It's like the plus b. And then you have the slope of 1,300 per year. So I know I kind of put it backwards. It's usually mx plus b, but I put it kind of in a b plus mx form. And then let's look at each of those if you were to plug in 6. So in the exponential scenario, we could plug in the 6, and in the linear, we can do the same thing. Now let's go ahead and just type those into the calculator. So we have 19,600 times 1.06 to the, which is the caret symbol above the division sign, to the 6th power. And we can go ahead and type in 19,600 plus 1,300 times 6. And notice we want to find the difference. So I could just go up here, press enter, minus this value here, and we find our difference. They want it rounded to the nearest dollar, which ends up being, since this is a 0.9, we'll round up and we get 403. Now you could have also just typed these in exactly the way that we have them, even calling this e of x and this one L of x. Make sure you don't use a comma, because if you do, it'll create this error. Commas are only used for ordered pairs. And then we could go ahead and say e of 6, and we get a value. And we could do the same thing for L of 6, and then we could find the difference between them. And since this one's larger, I mean, it really doesn't matter. If you do smaller minus bigger, you just know, flip the sign. You could actually have done it in one fell swoop here. We'll go like this, and then we actually get the answer immediately. And rounding to the nearest dollar, we get 403.